Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, welcome to our second webinar from the TBM Exec Advisory Forum. My name is Tim Pietro. I'm the host for today, and it is my pleasure to have two great speakers today. We have Jenn Franklin from FedEx and Jeremy King from Global Life, and I really think you're going to get a lot of great value and insight in regards to how they not only stood up their TBMO office, but really what's the future look like for them in regards to TBM adoption, metrics adoption, and kind of what's their path in regards to cost transparency, vendor insight. So I think you're going to have a really, really great time and a lot of great information. A couple things. One is you are all on mute. What we'll do is during Q&A, you actually have two options to submit a question. One option is you can raise your hand. So if you go over to your name, you should be able to click on the dot, and you just have to just click on raise hand. And what will happen then is I will then select you. I'll announce your name, and then you can go ahead and ask the question, and I'll keep you unmuted until you get the answer. The other option is if you don't want to raise your hand, you can just type in your question using the Q&A box. And again, we'll do Q&A after both presentations, and we have about 5 minutes scheduled for Q&A. So with that said, my pleasure to have Mr. King go ahead and share his presentation. And again, if you have any questions, please, we want to make this collaborative. We want everyone to be able to participate. So feel free to jump in and ask questions when we get to Q&A. So with that said, Jeremy, all yours.
Hey there. So Tim, you guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And my screen looks okay on your end.
Yes, you're kind of in the presenter slideshow mode. If you want to go full display, feel free to do that.
Okay. Let's see. I'll just stay right there for now. I'm not really sure exactly which one to hit. So
no problem.
Yeah, no worries. So real quick, I wanted to walk everyone through kind of our journey at Globe Life. I'm going to try to be as blunt and realistic and just kind of give you guys a flavor of what we've been doing for pretty much the last 4 years. This falls on a presentation that we did. We did one locally here in Dallas. We did one as well at the ITFM conference in Chicago. So my apologies if you've already seen this. It's going to look very familiar, but hopefully you can get a little something else out of it if that's the case. So this right here, we did it as a joint at the conference. We did a joint with my team. It's going to be me today, so you can kind of see the people who are on the team there. What is Globe Life? Just real quick, that way you guys get to know the company I work for. So Globe Life is a company that it has some differences. It actually, these companies you see, there's 5 of them that make up Globe Life. Globe Life is our main branding company. It's actually under an umbrella right now of a company called Torchmark. We are quickly moving it over to Globe Life because of the brand recognition. But all these companies have differences. They some of them have agents that just sell for the company. Some of them have agents that sell generally for other companies as well. We have a company, Globe Life, which is direct to consumer. And we even have some cancer rider products, et cetera. So the thing that actually ties all of them together is the fact that we are focused on truly the middle class. It's a little bit different niche than a lot of other life insurance companies. And because of that, maybe a way you could think of us is kind of the Walmart of life insurance. We sell a lot of policies, more life insurance policies than anyone else in the United States, but they tend to be of lower value than a lot of other people. So, they're typically in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. So what was finance like when I came in 2015, middle of 2015, I came in from a company called Tenet Healthcare, had a somewhat similar job over there, but my boss at the time over there came over here as a CIO. I actually followed him up, run the office, what you call the office of the CIO now, is what Gardner would call it. And what was finance like when I got here? So it was kind of not a freaky picture, but it was chaos. So when I came in, there was, that was the first thing my boss asked me to do is, hey, can you come in and just help us get something around the finances? And as I went around and talked to people, I realized that there's really no source of truth. Different people, some people were tracking their finances for their specific area in IT, and they were doing a really good job. And then some people weren't really doing a good job, and some people weren't really tracking at all. We didn't actually have a single source where we would plan out what we were going to spend, and we'd reconcile it with what got spent, and as well as purchase orders, invoices, making sure we're not overpaying. These were separate things and a lot of guesstimates around. And so my first job was to actually find a way to take this chaos and put it together. So if you're listening on the phone, you think, man, I don't know where you're at in your journey, but if you are on this side of chaos, just know that's exactly where we were about 4 years ago. So what did we do to put a focus on ending the chaos? Well, I've got two things listed on here, but it really is one thing. And what those was we followed a model and we built a team. And within the model, you will see the team concept. This is something that I have done in other areas of my that I own here as well. Since I not only own the finance function, I own vendor management, procurement, innovation, ERP, mergers and acquisitions, as well as I previously owned the project management, business relationship managers, resource managers. There's probably a couple others. So the point of this is a model that actually doesn't just have to be finance specific, but it works really well in any of these areas. So what is that model? The model takes you anywhere from a decentralized manual, which is what I walked into here in 2015, all the way to a decentralized automated. And so 2015 decentralized manual, which as I described before is chaotic, reactive. You don't have any standards. There's really not a way of doing it. People are doing it. It's something that needs to be done, but it's being done differently throughout the IT department or the organization. So the first thing that we did was actually get ourselves to what you call a centralized manual stage, which is a central team. And beginning at the first, that central team was me. And then what I did is I had a spreadsheet and I just said, okay, let's figure out what data points are really, really relevant around here. And I started off thinking there was about 30-ish, ended up with about 35 to 40. Found some things that my previous experience didn't tell me about that were important here, but weren't at my previous company. And just made sure that we started collecting all the information and every invoice, every purchase order, everything that was planned to be spent, we started putting it in that central spreadsheet at the time, repository. So that was through 2015. Also realized that that we had to move from there to what would be the next stage, which is centralized automated. We began that process in 2017, and I'll walk you through that a little bit further here in the presentation. But to do that is you'll still have a central team, but what you're doing is you're taking things from more of a spreadsheet over to a database, something that's automated, and you're going to use technology to do it. There's multiple reasons for this. One of them is obviously a spreadsheet can't be easily edited by more than one person at a time. They're just not as useful as a database as well. So this is something that we realized we had to do, but we wanted to get our act together first. So common error here, in my opinion, is people go from decentralized manual to a centralized automated, and they just want to say, I have a mess, let's slap some technology on top and let's call it a day and it'll fix everything. And you are missing a major milestone here, which I would call the centralized manual stage, which is getting your processes down, figuring out what data points are important before you actually move on. Decentralized automated, you're going to see that 2019, 2020. I'm actually involved in, another thing I own in the IT department is innovation. However, we're doing RPA right now, piloting across our organization. And so for us to get it in my area and actually move to that decentralized automated stage, we're kind of waiting in line right now a little bit, and hopefully we'll get to that either this year or next year. And one of the things that's cool about going from centralized automated to decentralized automated is the decentralized automated is a stage where even once your people go home, then you can actually have processes taking place behind the scenes even when your centralized team isn't there anymore. So that's kind of the next and last stage. And when we go to questions, if anyone has any thoughts on these stages or something they think that goes even further than what I put here, I would love to hear your feedback on that. Okay, so how did we centralize and right-size our team? That's the two things we did. First, in 2015, I was able to hire a manager for our FMO. His name's Michael Cruz. From there to this point in 2019, we actually have added 3 other people, which is Jason Tucker, Barrington Green, and Andy Spears. Along the way, originally, Barrington and Jason were acting as our financial management office, which means that they actually had ownership and covered half of the IT department each, which means they had all the financial meetings. They helped process all the invoices, all the purchase orders, anything financially related in their halves of the IT department they handled. What we were able to do and what we realized is we needed to get someone over into what you would call our technology business management office and start growing that, because TBM and the finance group are 2 separate things. And so we just recently added Andy to the group, and he's taken over Jason's responsibilities, and Jason is growing our TBM office as we speak. As well, we last year had 10 people in our organization get TBMA certified. So not just people on my team, but some people that were formerly on my team as well. Since I do own the office of the CIO, what Gartner would call that, I actually have some groups outside of mine now that actually used to report to me. Some of those people actually even got certified. So it was a big success. We were able to host it here at Globe Life. It was, I would encourage anyone on the phone, if you haven't gotten TBM certified, please do, because it's really, really useful. What does the environment look like here? So I know Jenny's going to come on and talk to you soon. What she is dealing with is much larger than what we have. So this is a lot simpler and a smaller company than that. But we this kind of gives you a little bit of a flavor. We're a little bit less than 100 million right now for technology spend, but we have 341 IT employees. We just outsourced some of our services last year. And to be honest with you, if we hadn't gone through all the financial things that I've kind of gone through with you guys, that would have been a brutal, brutal exercise. But it actually really helped us out to be able to figure out, okay, what happens if we actually turn this over to managed services? And it actually went pretty smoothly, which was a success. So at Globe Life, expenses can be split up to 10 ways. That's because we have 5 companies that fall under the umbrella, and they take on different ownerships for different projects. Some of them benefit one company more than the other, and sometimes they get spread across, as well as we're in insurance. So in insurance, you have admin versus acquisition. Admin is any dollar spent keeping a policy, and acquisition is any dollar spent to obtain the policy, is one way to look at it. So that's so things can go admin acquisition across 5 companies, so it can get rather complicated. 300 vendor contracts in place, 20 new project requests per week, and we actually still have 2 general ledgers. We are doing some legacy modernization, which is slowing down our ability to go to 1. That is coming in the future, but in the meantime, we have a lot of headaches, quite honestly, from that. And down here where you see the exclamation point, you can just see, as good as it sounds like things are, we still have problems. Things still slip through the cracks. One of the things I'd probably note here as well is we do a process here called the TEI process. It's a Forrester construct. They actually came out and did a workshop, and we kind of ran with their philosophy. But every technology project here has a 1-page business case that gets filled out that has every piece of data on it that we need. That is, who's pushing the demand, what all the revenue uplifts and cost reductions may be from the project, all the expenses in the various categories and vendors, and how they're going to spread cash versus GAAP, as well as, we do the ROI, NPV, et cetera. And then we also, that's where we also note which companies is hitting, whether it's hitting admin acquisition, what portfolio is going to hit. So we actually have a pretty good process that we do here for all of our technology spend. So as long as everything goes through that process, then for the most part, we don't have any kind of shadow technology coming up. All right, so moving on. So one of the things about this presentation is just really how do you stop your spreadsheet craziness? Because this is what we ran into. And we got pretty proactive at the time whenever Jason and Barrington had just come onto our financial management office. And we could tell that our spreadsheet was starting to die slowly. And so we started the process at that time of looking at technology and kind of getting it approved. Sometimes it takes a little while to get everyone to buy off that you need to purchase something. So we started that at the time, luckily, and we were able to move from our spreadsheet to Apptio. The way we did it, here's just another slide that kind of really focuses in on that model, going from centralized manual to centralized automated. The real key here is is right there, manual to automated. You're going to have a central team still, but you're taking your processes from your spreadsheet and you're going to do a gap. You're going to figure out which one of those can actually be converted over into your technology. They may not all be able to. We actually had some data points and some things that we had to leave behind or find other ways to do within the application. And then you're going to do an RFI, RFP, find the right vendor. For us, it was Apptio. It may not be for everybody, but that was a good vendor for us, and we have no regrets. And then you're going to convert that over. So why Apptio? I'm not going to read all this to you. You can kind of see what we thought were the reasons that we went with them. Robust support. It was obviously the way people view them and just the size of the company and the focus they've had for a long time. I started interacting with them years ago at my previous company that I worked for. And so in the Atom model, they helped build the TBM function itself. So it was a good choice for us. What did we do when moving from our spreadsheet over to our different modules for Apptio? What did we do? So we actually, right now we have 3 of them. We have plans to get 2 more and maybe to do some right sizing. But what we did is we started in January 2017, and Jason Tucker on our side really led the charge on this one to help us roll this out. And we first went with IT financial planning. This was suggested from people out there that, we were like, hey, we're going to buy cost transparency, vendor insights, and financial planning. What should we do? And I talked to some other people, and they said, originally people would roll out cost transparency, but it was suggested to us take on financial planning first, and that turned out, in our opinion, to be the right way to do it. So we did financial planning, cost transparency, and vendor insights, and got all of them rolled out within about 7 months. So big wins there. We've just kind of been in stasis ever since, trying to figure out. We don't want to just go buy modules to buy modules or not buy them to not buy them. So we're trying to figure out. And right now, it looks like we're going to probably move forward with a couple more, hopefully in the future, apps and services and business units. So we're looking at that right now. One of the other things I want to emphasize while we're on the slide is that I started realizing as I talk to people, one of the things we do here that might be unique that other people don't do, but we actually, because we have planning, cost transparency, et cetera, we actually, from our business cases I was telling you guys about earlier, we take all of our data, it goes into Apptio, into our planning module. Eventually, let's just say one of the line items there was software. It's a $100,000 piece of software that's estimated on our business case for said application. Once we cut our purchase order, we update our information in Apptio. So it goes, okay, we cut purchase order. It was 4672 purchase order, and it's now for $98,672. So that gets updated. Once we start paying it, let's say we had 3 invoices we're going to pay for that amount. So you would have 3 lines in a simplistic world in there. We actually reconcile. So we reconcile not just our plan of our spend, it gets updated to what purchase order actually gets cut, and it gets updated to all the invoices that we pay. So we make sure we don't pay anymore. So we do all this within Apptio. We're not just, some people are just doing cost transparency or just doing planning, but we reconcile the whole process within our application, which makes things a little complicated, I would say. So benefits realized, you guys can see these on the screen. I don't have to read through them all. I would say one, there's a couple of big ones on here. One of them, we jumped on top of the cloud thing immediately to make sure we got on top of that, just because I know being involved in finances for a long time, that as you start rolling into cloud, that made me really worried that we would have a lot of spend that's not really needed. So that was something we jumped on, and that's helped us out a lot. Obviously, being able to get the IT owners to see their spend and budget and to do that as well has been a pretty big one. And procurement, being able to capture renewals months in advance allows us to negotiate way, way better than we did before. We're being more proactive than reactive. So there's a few of them there. What's next for us? So if you have been TBM certified, what you'll find is, a lot of your goal is to move up the stack. So as an example, TBM allows you to talk 3 different languages: finance, IT, and business. So an example of that is in finance, if you buy a server, that's hardware. For IT, that's a server you just bought. But for the business, you just bought, hopefully, let's say it was for like a CRM or something. You just bought the ability for your salespeople to be much more efficient and to sell more. That's really what you're buying. You're not thinking, oh, I'm buying a server. You're buying an ability. And so that's what TBM does. It allows you to talk, to be trilingual, is the way I would put it. But to do that, you got to work your way to the top of this model. At the bottom, cost, pools, and sub-pools, that's more finance. You got IT towers and sub-towers, but to work your way all the way up through services and business units, now you can talk the language all the way through, and you can trace the dollars all the way through. So that's what we're working on right now. We plan to be there in the next year or two, and that obviously leads to helping you do showback, chargeback. And then I guess we're going to handle questions at the end. So I will turn this over. I will stop sharing and turn this over to Jenn now.
Okay, great. So feel free to raise your hand or just type in your question in Q&A, and I'll let Jeremy read from there. I'll jump in first. So what was your biggest barrier as you jumped through those 4 phases? What was your biggest barrier that you faced early on as you were trying to adopt TBM?
I think, okay, so a couple things there. So our biggest barrier, first of all, was education, just getting people educated, my boss, other people within the company, of what TBM is and why is it needed. So that's a big one right there. So once you've gotten that voice out there and you understand and you can explain it, the biggest barrier to go through those 4 processes of the module is the things you don't control that are outside of you, such as we've been putting in a service management app, and it has affected our ability to move forward really quickly. Another example is RPA. I would love to jump to decentralized automated, but to do so and to get RPA in, I'm having to wait in line at the enterprise to get it into that area. So to me, it's educating people of what it is and convincing them. It's kind of a sales job. And then it's everything you don't control that can actually help you work through that model. Good question. Thanks, Tim.
Great. And there are some questions in the Q&A box if you want to run through those, or I can read them.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'll try to do my best here. I see when do you start realizing savings? Let me think of the best way so when do you start realizing savings on that? And I'm not sure exactly if that's directed around our TEI or if it's, but I'll say there's a couple things. So within TBM, there's something called insight hunting, where you now have data that you can actually fish and find ways to save money. So we have been doing that. And I actually have Jason here. And yeah, I have Jason Tucker's in the office here with me listening to this. So I'll actually let him pipe up if he's.
Well, Sweden's tracking her savings through vendor.
Yes. Okay, so Jason brings up a point. We have someone who does vendor insights, and her name's Smita, and she actually tracks all the savings. She's working that data as well. She's in a cost optimization role now, so she's going to be helping out even more in the insight hunting. But I would say as soon as you get your data together to where you can actually start using it. So that would be the first thing. That would be I'm going to try to roll through these. So I would say that would probably be the answer on that one. You mentioned that procurement is now able to capture the renewals in advance. Yes. So, and I'll answer this, and if Jason wants to jump in there, I'll let him. But yeah, so we actually have built into Apptio, we know the renewal dates. And so if someone is going in there, if they're the people who actually are negotiating that, they can go out there and say, show me the renewals that are coming up in the next 3 months. And what this does is it gives them time in advance to actually really negotiate versus, oh my goodness, this is up in the next week or two, which is what we were doing before, and just kind of like, we'll take what we can get. Now we've got time to really, really work with the vendors to also maybe sometimes consolidate contracts down. So it's been very, very helpful Did you find any quick win first year of implementation? If yes, could you elaborate on it, please? Jason, any thoughts on that one? Quick wins from the first?
Finding things within the forecast that are, it's partially implementation is also cleaning up your data at the same time. And that's when you find things that shouldn't be there. Those are the quick wins, and you're actually cleaning up your forecast while you're implementing.
Yeah, so if you guys heard it, part of it was just we were putting in forecasts that had bad data in it. Therefore, we were telling people, hey, we're going to need 80 million next year. But when you really cleaned it up, you realize it's really most 70, 75. We had some duplicates. This obviously as well leads to when you say quick wins, I would throw that in the category of also now you've got your data, now you can start negotiating better. So I mean, to me, it was pretty much immediate. I mean, it's 2019. We've only been doing this a couple years, and it has been night and day over what we had before. Last one, what module within Apptio gives you the capability, CT, vendor insights, or IT planning? So what module within Apptio gives you that capability? Oh, this is from Kara, mentioned procurement. Within Apptio, vendor insights is what's given us that view of the renewals in advance.
180 days.
Yeah, 180 days. So I believe there is a report you can pull off of cost transparency. We're just not certain if it gives you everything that you get from vendor insights because we use vendor insights. So I think there's kind of two ways you can go on that if you don't have vendor insights. Let's see what else. So how do you get the buy-in from your senior management, invest in Apptio and create your TBM anywhere? Okay, this is a great one. How do you get that buy-in to create it? So for me, it was slowly. I had to go piece by piece by piece. So it was painful. It was kind of proven all along the way. I first just had to talk my boss into saying, hey, I need someone to help me out with this. And then it's just been, hey, we need, and just been as things have gotten better, it's saying, hey, we really need to do this. So that may work for some people. I know I interact with Pepsi sometime, and their CIO came in, was all about TBM and just bought into it. But that may not be the case for everybody. So one of the things I would say is here at Globe Life, business cases come really, really handy. So if you can say, hey, once we get vendor insights, we do believe we can save money. So you might have to do a little research. How much money can you save? But I would say it's out there, and it makes complete sense to be able to save the money, but you got to have the data. And that's what really TBM is. It's clear, financial, transparent data. So hopefully that helps. So that helps with you. And then for renewals, I see Carrie said, okay. And then, all right, I think that's all of them. I want to make sure Jenny has plenty of time, so I think we're good to go.
Thank you so much. That was extremely insightful. So thank you, Jeremy. Great job. And thank you so much. So I will now hand this over to Jenny. And Jenny, feel free to go ahead if you want to maximize your PowerPoint slide. Go for it. And thank you again. All yours, Jenny. All right.
Or is it,
You're
are
on
you
now.
able to see the whole slide?
Yep, we see it. Thanks, Jenny.
You see the whole thing? Okay. All right. Sorry. My name is Jenn Franklin. I'm the TBMA lead for our TBM office at FedEx Services. FedEx Services is an operating company or OpCo that supports the other OpCos. We have marketing, sales, IT, finance, HR. TBMO makes up the IT and finance segments of that. Let's see. Go down a page. This is our environment. We've been doing TBM since about 2012, and we use Apptio's cost transparency module. We also had some business insights that were grandfathered in. We run all IT domestic expense dollars through the model, and we move the spend across all the supported infrastructure, applications, services, and business units. And I'll get into more details as far as the future direction, the output and reporting, and the model framework. Our office structure is a partnership of IT and finance. So we roll up to two separate organizational structures, but act as one team. The finance side rolls up to the CFO, the IT side rolls up to the CIO, and both report to Mr. Smith. IT has 3 TBMAs. I handle the model and configuration, and 2 other TBMAs handle reports and data loads. Finance has 2 TBMAs, and they handle rate cards and service rates and chargebacks. Going on to our journey, I won't read all of this to you. I'll give you some backstory on some of the major highlights. When we first started, we just had the base data and the base allocations, and it took us about a year to get comfortable even with that. I will tell you that the only thing that moves fast at FedEx are the packages. Once we felt the numbers were good enough, then came the job of socializing and selling it, explaining why people needed it and how TBM would benefit them. I guess the real conversation starter came once you put ink to paper, once people started seeing the reports. That was the biggest eye-opener because people were like, my application costs what? They didn't understand that whole total cost of ownership construct. So that led to the second main hurdle. The first being, oh, the data isn't ready, it's not clean enough. P.S. It's never perfect, just do it, get started on it. The second being that for 40 plus years, everyone operated based on their individual cost center view. So TBM allows us to shift from that vertical siloed view to more of a horizontal enterprise view. So now we can see the total cost of ownership across IT. And shifting those gears really took a minute because old habits die hard. But once everyone began to see and understand the value of TBM and its ability to show enterprise-wide spend and impacts, they became more and more interested. We still run into hiccups along the way, even with all the meetings, the conversations, the road shows, the training. Inevitably, some things don't stick or trickle down. Can't cover just everyone. A good case in point would be several years ago, we had one of our VPs bring TBM numbers into a meeting. And in front of finance, the senior officers, and everyone, he claimed that the entire fully burdened cost of their application could be counted as savings because they were retiring that application. And so that led to more conversations and finance calling for everyone to get their TBM numbers first, engage with their finance partner prior to communicating any numbers for any type of business case. So, and the reason they wanted finance involved in it is because, they have to interrogate that business case and that number and see what actual part of that fully burdened cost is going to go away. Because as you know, typically most of the cost stays because the resources and the infrastructure are just assigned to a different effort anyway. But that's how TBM became embedded in our financial processes. Finance wouldn't accept anyone's analysis or calculated numbers after that little incident. If you're saying your ROI, your return on investment, is contingent upon retiring an application, a piece of infrastructure, a service, finance always wants you to bring the TBM numbers to the table first. So, and TBM didn't really just impact the financial area. It also impacts the infrastructure teams as well. Various teams have come to us and continue to come to us and ask how they can use TBM to change behaviors. We have people asking, we're wanting to move people from physical to virtual. We're trying to get so-and-so off of this older array because it's costing us a high maintenance contract and it's taking up white space in our data center. So we've made many tweaks to our allocations to tax certain situations heavier than others, and that helps incentivize where necessary when we need to get people to move off of older hardware. As of late, we're using TBM to determine if it makes sense to move certain applications or projects to the cloud versus keeping them in-house. We're always using it to identify underutilized infrastructure and redundant applications. And the biggest game changer by far that TBM presented was the chargebacks at FedEx. We started in 2015 with a showback to make sure that we were ready and give the operating companies a heads up. And that in turn led to more analysis and course correction concerning various allocations. But the following year, we were able to go live with the actual chargeback based on TBM. And TBM really flipped the script for us chargeback-wise, because previously we would do the chargeback based on revenue, and now we're doing it based on actual consumption, and it's just more fair across the board. Let's see, what else? TBM has also helped open the business's eyes, as well as improve relationships with IT. Before, we were one big dysfunctional family, and now we're just one big happy family. Haha. So IT was always perceived as this expensive black box. Nobody knew. IT's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. So now the business can see it's not only IT's decisions that drive up prices, but it's their own decisions as well. So IT and business can actually come together, and instead of having a boxing match about these types of things, we can come together, work towards a solution for the betterment of FedEx. So that kind of highlights where we've been and what we're doing today. I'll go into some of because Tim mentioned that as far as how we do our TBM office, and how we run things. So I'll walk through some of that. We have several internal processes that we adhere to. I'm sorry, I'm kind of fighting some sinus issues right now, so I know I sound like I'm talking through my nose, but for auditing purposes, we instituted and documented and adhere to strict change management procedures. Every month we have load reviews. We document all the nooks and crannies of that, along with the before and after analysis for each change. All changes are tested. Test results are added to the documentation. If any of the cost driver changes are in excess of plus or minus 5%, we move on up to a VP level review. If not, we only review and approve up through the director level. After we load the data, we've got about 28 data feeds, down from 75 due to a lot of consolidation. We load the data and the changes, and prior to moving everything to production, we're still in R11, so it's not just a quick flip and, we're live. So we still run through dev, stage, production, offline, and all of that. But we have a handful of power users who review the reports and ensure everything looks in order. And after everything passes the power user test, we copy up through production and send out the emails concerning the reports and how they're live to the officers and directors. A week following every load review, we review the changes with the VP reps and answer any questions. We also take suggestions and have made several improvements to our model as a result of their involvement. We have steering committees on a quarterly basis to keep the officer team abreast of everything going on. We actually instituted some awards, so we hand out awards annually to those who contribute and help support TBM as well, to keep the engagement up and the momentum up. That covers, that's across the board from individual contributors all the way up to senior VPs. The next slide is how we grow and mature TBM, but these are all points we've already covered. They're just summarized here, but socialize it, sell the benefits of it, get it embedded into your processes, and solidify those relationships with people, get them engaged. Next steps for us, like I said, we're still on R11. We're going to be doing the R12 migration in the coming months and possibly doing a proof of concept for Apptio's hybrid business management module. Everyone is jumping on the cloud bandwagon. When your CIO says, I want X% of our apps to be cloud-based, then everybody jumps in. There's very little governance around it right now. People are working on it, but we're trying to get in front of it and ensure that we have a strict app tagging policy so we can ingest the data and ensure that the expenses hit the application supported versus going to a service or something like that. I mentioned earlier that we modeled domestic expense, and our TNT partners, which were rebranded recently to FedEx Express, our partners across the pond, they are getting started with cost transparency. They're already on R12. And they are also working with the other regions to get them on board too. But that, in a nutshell, is our story so far and what we're doing. And I thank you for listening. And let's see, looks like we have some questions. Are all of these open questions still, Tim?
I think the very bottom one with Gerardo.
Okay. Yes. They were current employees. Let's see, when you talk about having 5 TBMAs, are these resources 100% TBM, and were they current? They were current employees. They wound up pulling people from various areas and just assign them, this is their job 100%, but as in all job descriptions, you've got that little line that says other duties as assigned. So we have a few other projects going on, but primary, I'd say 80-20 rule, it's TBM. Let's see, we got another one.
I think it's the same one. I'll jump in with the question. And again, audience, feel free to raise your hand or type in your question. In regards to the ownership of your services, do you have service owners? Do you have a services team? How are the services managed today and the offerings?
We have, I guess you could say, the services are kind of like our capabilities, and all of our applications have those in terms of like tower owners is kind of what we like to call them. Yep. Like we've got a particular VP that's over servers and storage or capacity. You've got a VP area for network, you've got a VP area for security and so forth. So we took the heads of all of those areas, and that makes up our steering committee, and we keep them updated on the goings-on of TBM, and a lot of them rely on TBM to help out. So I hope that answers the question, but
great.
If not...
Nope. Perfect. I think Marcus has a question in the Q&A box for you, Jenny.
Okay. Any more processes within the IT company in addition to finance that rely on the TBM structure? Mainly the business cases and chargebacks. But, like I said, I think the business cases are more so. The chargeback is an annual thing, but the business cases, people are always coming to us, and like I mentioned earlier, if they're not trying to get all of the TCO for their applications so they can go to finance with a business case. Then it's the IT people coming to us and, finding out, okay, the infrastructure that's underutilized or the redundant applications. And like I said recently, with everyone jumping on the cloud bandwagon, we've had some people say, okay, what's the fully burdened cost for this row in the data center? We're thinking about going, public cloud with this row. And so we'll have to, pull the numbers and get that to them. But yeah, that's the main thing. We don't have IT planning yet, although I am super interested in Jeremy's take on IT planning, because that was one of the downsides that we didn't really like with Apptio, and I'm sure with machine learning and AI and all that, we'll probably get there at some point, but some sort of predictive analytics. So, when your senior VP comes to you and says, what am I going to look like in 5 to 10 years? What's the infrastructure going to look like? Well, there's not really an easy way to do that in Apptio unless you, in R11 they're called snapshots, but I guess in R12 they're called branches. But little copies of the environment and tweaking it with some assumptions. I really don't know any other way other than, Jeremy and his team have a real good handle on IT planning and what they're using it for. And hey, maybe he can do a future demo or something like that. I'm putting him on the spot, but I'm super interested in how they're doing that and how they're able to do forecasting and stuff of that nature. Let's see. What would you do different in year 1 of implementation now that you know more? Get started sooner. Communicate it sooner. Don't, like I said, the only thing that we do fast at FedEx are packages, because I swear everything takes 1 to 2 years just to grind through it all. And everybody knows when you first start out, even the seasoned people who've been using TBM for years and years, the data is never perfect. The important thing, get those reports out sooner. So I would almost socialize and get the reports out at the same time if you could, because until people see that number, they don't really get it. And you start showing, the impact that all these dollars make and how it just opens eyes. And that would be the one thing that I wish we could have done a lot sooner. Just stop hemming and hawing over the data, get it on paper and get it out there. People knew what TBM was, and it was almost like the roadshow died off, and then it took a year to get the reports out. So it was like we should have had that up and running a lot sooner, and we would have had more traction going in. Talking about the monthly procedures, you mentioned that the changes go through 3 levels: power user, directors, and then VPs. That is when we have a change, but this is if you have changes to the model. Every month is directors and power users for sure. VPs only if we go, if one of those cost drivers drop, greater than or less than 5%. But yeah, we've got changes to the model. We may be introducing new data, a new data set that changes things. Inevitably, we have somebody coming through, and there's a particular data set that we rely on, like CMDB, for example, in our ServiceNow setup. Well, they'll upgrade it to the next level of ServiceNow, and then lo and behold, they'll go in there and change all of the header names, all of the table names. So then we have to work on that. We have to restructure our transforms. I know there aren't transforms in R12 now, but like I said, we're still in R11. So we may have to change logic based on name changes of the columns, like I said, new data set, model changes. We may be introducing new reports, pretty much any change. And actually, every month, we don't have the project module lit up or the component installed, so we have a mapping table that we use that tells has a list of umpteen hundred projects, and this is the resource tower, and this is the sub tower it should be going to. And so in our model, we've got it to where if there's a project, it uses that mapping first. If it doesn't have a project number, then it defaults to the cost center mapping. So we have project mapping updates every month anyway. But yeah, those are just the type of changes we've got. So it's kind of across the board. And hopefully that answers that. If not, type me another one. When and how did you start dollar savings? Immediately was when we were able to see how much it costs to run some of the larger applications and everything that was involved, operations support, infrastructure support. We were able to reallocate resources and infrastructure by taking those big applications and moving them to a SaaS application or something like that, software as a service. So a SaaS offering, that's the word I'm groping for. So that was the biggest thing. And the other one, that was the biggest thing that started it, and moving lots of people off of these old metal boxes, these physical servers, and getting them more virtualized and changing that ratio up. So that was the main savings in the beginning, was offloading some apps to SaaS, moving a lot to virtual. What has been the most significant discovery or surprise for you regarding IT spend that you didn't know before Apptio? I guess before, we were relying on financial spreadsheets, kind of like what Jeremy was showing you, that big mess of a spreadsheet picture that you saw. That was us before. And whenever people, inevitably, Senior VP will come down with what we call a fire drill and say, I need this information now. I need to know how much this is costing me. Well, all we had was the financials and maybe some disparate systems, disjointed, disconnected systems that had all of the infrastructure and details. A lot of it wasn't fair. So that was another thing that TBM helped that I didn't mention. Data quality was huge. We really once people started seeing the reports and seeing the data, they started paying attention to the systems that was feeding TBM. So our application inventory started cleaning up. Our CMDB with all of our servers and everything started cleaning up. We started improving with our app host matching. So a lot of that was, very much eye-opening after we started.
Awesome. I have another question for you, Jenny. And again, I think we got about a minute left, and this has been outstanding. I have another question from Matt. He's asking, how did you start to evolve your service taxonomy? Do you leverage Atom out of the box, or?
Yeah, well, not out of the box. We were one of the ones that started early on before Atom came about. So Atom being the Apptio TBM Unified Methodology, I believe it stands for. But yeah, we were kind of like all over the place. We were very complicated in our allocations, very customized. And so once Atom came about and they did that, so we would have more benchmarking abilities across companies, standardized taxonomy and everything. So we try to stay as close to Atom as possible. There's a lot that we don't use. Like there's a lot of the WAN, LAN, all of that with the network side. Our guys were mainly interested in data center versus field. So that's their main focus. It's like, I want to know how much I'm paying for data center related network versus field related network, direct, indirect. So just information like that. We don't use a lot of the towers and sub towers, but I would say we use 80% of them. But yeah, we stick as close to the atom model as possible because we don't want to have headaches headaches when it comes to reconfiguring things.
We'll go with one more of Carla. She has two questions for you, and then we'll go ahead and call it a wrap. And one of it is she asks, how big is your TBM office in regards to loading data and validation, and again, how many people are in your TBM office?
3, and I'm just talking ICs because we're the worker bees. We're the ones in the trenches doing the work. There's 3 on the IT side, 2 on the finance side, and we work on the data loads and the changes, and we validate everything. That's just a rinse and repeat monthly process. If you want, I can talk. I think I talked about how to go about getting better data also. I mean, really, that is getting involved with your SMEs and your infrastructure leads and getting everything on the reports, getting ink to paper and getting it under their nose and saying, here it is, and they'll start to see that the data wasn't as good as they thought, and it helped them tighten up the gears a little because everybody wanted to true up their numbers in TBM, so really it was a joint effort with everyone to try and tighten everything up.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jenny and Jeremy. This was outstanding. We are going to post this up on our YouTube page, so if you haven't signed up for our LinkedIn group, please do so. We have some great upcoming events. We will post links to each of these events on the LinkedIn forum group, and we will see everybody in July. So thank you for joining, and please collaborate. Please feel free to jump into the forum, ask questions, let's make connections, and have a wonderful day. Take care.